never stop, never settle. I got Henny all in my cup. I'm on top, I'm on a level, yeah. I'm tryna get to the back, got it on lock, got it on smash, yeah. She tryna holler what's up, I'm with the shits, this how it is, yeah. When you on your way up, I'm on my way, I'm on my way, I'm on my way.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the NFS podcast. I hope that you are having a great day and doing something to push you forward in your life, whether it's your friendships, your family, your health, your wealth, your wellness, any of that stuff, because that's what we're here for. And to be quite frank, going into this episode, going into this new version 2, I want to say, of the podcast, because some things have been made very clear to me, and there's still a lot of stuff that I'm trying to figure out on my own. Now, if you've been a long-time listener of the podcast, you've probably noticed that up until episode, I believe, 30, there hasn't been a whole lot going on. Even on my social media page, even on Instagram, even on TikTok, when I started posting stuff, even on all that stuff, I've been a little MIA. And it's hard to say that there's a good reason for that. It's hard to say that, there's a good reason for ever stepping away from what I've built or stepping away from what I'm doing. It very much is a byproduct of what's been going on. And I started to realize very, very quickly that the podcast was starting to turn into a little bit of a chore, a little bit of a task. And I hate that I keep saying that, because I feel like every single time that I take a small hiatus and come back, I end up talking about the podcast like it's this negative thing. And it really isn't. Not at all. It's more of I'm dealing with a lot of interpersonal things. I think I'm finding out more and more where I have opportunities to grow, where I have opportunities to improve myself, where I have opportunities to better myself, to better my relationships, to better friendships. And a lot of it might sound very like, oh, cool, like you're working on yourself, you're going after, you're trying to get after your dreams and your goals, which 100%, that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. But it's becoming also more apparent how lackluster all of that is. How lackluster I have been with my performance, with my consistency, with my dedication, with my commitment to things. And it's hard to look anybody in the eye and to tell them that everything is fine and okay, when behind the scenes things are always a little bit scrambled and a little bit rushed. Now, there are certain things that I can't talk about due to certain reasons that are not necessarily anybody's problem but mine. And there's certain things that I can talk about. And I am definitely going to share a little bit about the things that I can talk about. Because there's no hiding away from the fact that I have not been present. I mean, the podcast still manages to get some views here and there. Still manages to get some downloads and listens, which is all good and great. But, I mean, I built this podcast originally as an outlet for me to kind of talk about my life, talk about my experiences. And as things have grown and things have gone, I felt more and more of a pressure to kind of push some kind of narrative, which is exactly against what I wanted in the beginning. I wanted to be 100% organic, 100% of what I'm going through. I wanted to be transparent and no lies. And at some point, when it started to feel more of a chore or a task, it was blatantly feeling, in my own opinion, to myself, it was blatantly turning into the things that I hate the most when it comes to this whole self-help industry and stuff, where it's like, like I'm preaching, I'm showing you or telling you how to live a better life. I'm telling you how to do better, how to be a better person. When in fact I fall short plenty of times. Over the past 3 months, specifically this last, whether you want to call that a trimester or something like that, I have failed time and time again. And it's not even just like a failure of like, I learned from it. Of course I'm learning from my mistakes, but only time will tell if I truly understand the lesson. But it just feels as if I've been in a rut mentally. And it's really hard to explain that. Because it takes a certain amount of time, a certain amount of, I guess, reflection and understanding to really figure out what the fuck that means. What does it mean that I'm in a rut? What does it mean that I'm not feeling 100%? Like, with everything that I'm doing, everything was put on a standstill for a little bit. And I know this is all in vague and kind of kind of not clear, but you guys will hopefully understand a little bit what I mean. But everything took a pause. I mean, training took a pause. Work took me working on Never Settle took a pause. Everything took a pause except for what had to get done, like my job, what had to get done, like being with family. Everything took a pause for a little bit of time here, and I've just for lack of a better term been dying. I've been strangling Never Settle because I have not put in the effort to do so. And there's no the fun part about this being my thought child is that it's completely my fault. Like, all the responsibility at the end of the day, all the responsibility falls on me. Like, it comes from my leadership, it comes from what I'm able to do, and it becomes very, very transparent that, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping at night because I'm anxious, because I feel like I haven't done enough. Having small panics throughout the day and just worrying and being like, fuck, I have like so much to do. Like, I have these expectations to fill that people view me as. They see me as, this person, and I have to display this person. There are certain things that are coming and going in my life, and I can't control them. And there are decisions that I have to make, and I don't know which one's the right one. And no matter what decision I make, it feels like it's always going to be the wrong one. Like, these thoughts have been bothering me, and they've been eating away at me for a little bit here. And it fucking sucks, to be honest. And I don't need a pity party. I don't need you guys to be like, oh, like, boo-hoo you, or like any of that shit. I'm not on here to ask for any of that. But I'm on here to say that regardless of what you see on the internet, regardless of how somebody displays their life, everybody is going through their own shit. Everybody is going through their own things. And you have to be able to meet them at some point. You have to be able to talk to them at some point, because cool, like, you're posting on the gram, you're posting on TikTok, you're sharing, you're laughing in a group text. Everything's cool and great, but it's like, what goes beyond the surface of what somebody's displaying? What goes that next step further? See, when it came to the idea of this podcast, I wanted it to be something that was so unbridled that I could just come on here and talk. And that's what I'm doing right now. There's no script. There's no notes. There's nothing. It's me talking to myself. It's me finally sitting down and allowing my thoughts to just release, because I haven't done that. And it's so meditative on here to kind of allow myself to just roam through what my brain is processing and thinking. And a lot of the times it lets me relax at the end of the day. And Ari, you called me out on Instagram and you said, consistency was one of my weaknesses, consistency. And that ties into a whole lot of this, because it's been a big struggle for me to be consistent with everything. And I don't know if it's the pressure that I put upon myself, or who I am as a person, or just the lack of skills and discipline that I haven't accrued over time. But it's very true. You hit the nail right on the head. I have a very big lack of consistency. I tend to start things and for things to go right. For 6 months of this show, everything went extremely well, extremely fine. And then all of a sudden it dropped, because I felt like I couldn't just sit in front of the camera and talk anymore. I felt like I couldn't sit in front of this camera and this microphone and just speak. It became, I got to get this done. It's another task on my list. Like, it's okay, this needs to be done, edited and cut and put out by this time so that people can have it on this and every single week. And it took away from what I enjoyed. And I realized fairly recently that it's like, what I enjoy in life are the people that I surround myself with. And the funny part about that is I have a really big tendency to isolate myself. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't seen anybody or stuff like that. Granted, COVID and all that stuff, but let's put all that stuff aside. It doesn't mean that I've like not talked to friends and not talked to family and da-da-da-da. But it means that I struggle a lot to find that time out of my life to go out and just enjoy the simple things. You can grind it down to hustle culture. You can grind it down to trying to build a business. You can grind it down to all these things. But it's finding what's important for you. And I feel like I thought I knew what was important to me. I thought I knew the basis of what was important to me, that I had everything figured out, which I should have figured out very fast. That of course I don't have everything figured out. Of course I don't know everything. You shouldn't. Nobody does. But there's just so much to life that I want to explore and I want to try out. But this part of me that still exists, that limiting factor, I guess if you want to say it, is fighting as hard as it can to come back up, which is interesting. Because there's been, I think it's something that also everybody will go through. I think there's something that everybody will go through, whether when you're building confidence, when you're trying to build yourself up, whether if you're trying to make something for yourself or go to school or whatever it is. There's going to be that point where you're like, fuck, like, is this worth it? Like, am what I am trying to accomplish right now worth it in the long run? Is all of this suffering and this pain, is it worth it in the long run? And for some people, it probably happens quick. For some people, it happens later. I know with how I am, where I want to jump from one thing to another naturally, that it tends to happen quick. But I had those thoughts like, damn, I'm working on all of these things. And thank God that they all work into each other. But, like, do I have the patience for this? Do I have the time for this? Like, is it going to work out? Like, what am I trying to do? Like, I'm going into school again and trying to finish all that up, adding another thing to my plate on top of all this other stuff with the podcast and the athletic training and the extra courses to learn and work and balancing my relationships. Like, and it gets very overwhelming very fast. And I'll always talk about Nipsey Hussle when I talk about being overwhelmed, because he said it the best, at least as far as I know, where he said if you're overwhelmed, that's okay, because that means that you understand where you need to be at and where you're currently at. So you need to figure out how to grow in order to bridge that gap. And I think that's where I am right now. I'm in a very overwhelmed state. There is so much going around. There's so much going on around me. And I can't really put my finger on exactly which thing I want to let go of, because unfortunately one of those things is you have to trim the fat or build a team. Either way, and I've built a pretty good team around me. At least I would like to think so. But it gets very overwhelming, like doing this alone, and I think that's a really big part of the whether you want to call it an entrepreneurial journey, because I don't want to call myself that, because I haven't exactly started a business. I haven't started anything really. But whatever journey this is on, I think it's a really big part of that, where it's like, cool, you're going to have those moments where you're like, oh shit, like how the fuck am I going to do this? And then you got to figure it out. I mean, how many times have you tried something new or tried to go after something that was a big dream, something that you accomplished, by the way? Let's have that in mind. That was a big dream. And like at some point in it, you're like, damn, this is like, you understand the magnitude of what you're aiming for. You understand how big of an actual task it is, how important it is, how much of a difference it can make in your life. And it's like a scary thought a little bit. I'm sure I don't believe there's a single person that like has that thought and is like, oh, I'm perfectly fine. Like I'm good deal, dude. We're solid. Like, that might be displayed on the outside, but on the inside, it's like, fuck, if this doesn't work, like, that's it. Like, I can't go back. And that's also another really interesting thing about this whole thing. Like, granted, I'm 22 years old. And I think about that sometimes. Like, I sit on that. Like, for those of you that are listening and don't know my age, I'm 22 years old. And I constantly think to myself, like, fuck, I have to grow bigger. I have to grow faster. I have to do these things. And I started to get way too overwhelmed with the numbers, with the t-shirts that are going to come out and the hats. I'm like, okay, like, I got to focus on these numbers. And like, I have to X quantity with everything that I'm doing. I'm like, oh, like metrics, age, time, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough capital. I don't have enough money. Like, I got to figure these things out. And I'm bouncing back and forth and I'm stressing myself out. And I'm like, shit, fuck, what am I going to do? That I forget to catch my breath and realize, hey, you just started this shit. You just now started this shit. Like, you're 22. You started this when you were 21, but not even like 21 freshly, like at the end of being 21. And you think that it's just going to be like peachy, like it's just going to be like, boom, next year we're good. Next year we're good. Like double growth, triple growth, quadruple growth. No. It's going to take time. And that's something that I got to understand, that it's like, it's okay to move slower in those steps. It's okay to still your mind for a little bit in order to move to the next step. And I think that's something that it gets ahead of me, because I like to, when I start to have ideas and thoughts and all of these creative things that I want to work on, that I get so sidetracked with all of that stuff that I forget the main point why we started. The main point why I started this podcast. I want to help you guys. But I know that I can't help you by saying shit and telling you to do shit that I don't do. I know I can't help you guys by lying and not telling you the truth. I know I can't help you guys by preaching and saying that I'm better, look at me, figure it out. I know that I can't help you guys by hiding behind a screen all the time and not being about it. I know I can't tell you guys and help you guys what to do if I don't accomplish the goals that I set out to achieve. I can't help you guys if I continuously lack in the consistency of putting value first. I can't. That's kind of a tough pill to swallow, because my whole life, I mean, there's been things that have come relatively easy. There are things that have been difficult and I've had to work at. And there's a medley of it. But it's like, this podcast is me talking to myself. And I forgot that. That got lost somewhere. That at the end of the day, like, whoever's listening to this, I love that you're listening to this. But when it comes to recording this podcast, I am talking to myself. And that's what allows me to be very transparent here. Because I can lie to myself all I want. But it doesn't get me anywhere. It doesn't push my agenda forward. It doesn't push my goals forward. It just saves face. And then we move on. And that doesn't do anything for anybody. That doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for you. It actually probably makes things a hell of a lot worse. When I'm talking to myself in this camera, in this microphone, and I hear my voice and I hear everything going on, it's warm because it feels like home. It feels easy. It feels nice. And it's like, yes, this is the Never Fucking Settle podcast. But why did I choose that out of all the things in the world? It's because I have a history of doing just that. Settling for everything. When I was growing up, I'm still growing right now. Let's not mistake and say that I'm a perfect human being. I am far from it. But I would settle. I would never go out and ask the girl to go out on a date. I would never go out and put myself forward knowing that I would get made fun of. I would never go out and try my best in sports because I just assumed that I couldn't get to that level. I never pushed myself for the vast majority of my life. And now for the slight snap of time where I have pushed myself a little bit and where I have been looking forward to making more out of myself and more progress, I understand that feeling wholeheartedly when it's like you feel like you fought tooth and nail every step of the way for whatever it is in your goal. And you achieved it. And that feeling is irreplaceable. You can't replace that with anything else. Knowing that all of your hard work paid off. Knowing that you did something. Knowing that you made something out of yourself. That feeling will never go away. It's so brilliant because you feel it like a light, like a warm light in the center of your chest. When you get that feeling that it's like everything that I did to work towards this moment finally is paying off. The stress, the anxiety, the worry, the panic, the fear, everything was worth it. Dragging yourself up early in the morning, pulling yourself through the mud, making sure that every single thing you do at least kind of makes you end up being a better person at the end of that day. Because that's what it's about. Every single day you wake up and that scoreboard's 100-0, not in your favor. And it becomes your goal to run up your score. Did you win 100-1? Good for you. If you win by 10 more points, 100 points, good for you. But it's about waking up and going after it. And I haven't been doing that quite as well. Like I said, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the background. And maybe at some other point I will tell you some of these stories. I know that I'm not ready to share them, and I'm sorry if that kind of leads you on a little bit to what the fuck I'm trying to talk about here. But I just want you guys to understand that it's like, you got to figure it out too. At the end of the day, you got to figure out what you want, what you are going for, what is that dream, what is that goal, what is that aspiration. And it doesn't, again, I have to keep on rephrasing this, because now with the current state of social media and everything has to be, oh, I got to make $100 million by the time I'm 35, or I got to have this car, or this house, or, It's like, no. So don't worry about the fucking materialistic things. They come and they go. It's cool. Yeah, like money helps. Money does significantly help. That's why I want to make some money. But if you can't help yourself from the inside out, and you can't have that passion and that flame and that drive, and you can't feel that inspiration, like, what does it matter? What does it matter to you? You've simply spent your time wasted on stuff that's not going to, especially if you were someone that has religious beliefs. If you are someone that believes at the end of your life you will go on to eternity, and that the eternity will be dictated by the actions that you have done on earth, predicated by the rules, boundaries, and guidelines set by your faith. And again, I'm no religious historian or anything like that, but the entire book revolves around being a good-ass person. Being someone who genuinely cares. Someone that genuinely is attentive to people. Someone who genuinely wants people to be better. Not being the guy with the Lamborghini. Not being the woman with the most Instagram follows. None of that matters. It doesn't. Because at the end of the day, did you make somebody else's life better? And not just like, oh, like you made them want to work out like once or something like that, or like you gave them a hint of motivation. That comes and goes. Who cares? I mean, did you have an effect on somebody's life that made them 1% better? And did you do that as much as you possibly can? Did you go out and did you seek the people that you can affect most? Or did those people seek you because of something that you've done? I have to ask myself that question. Because I can't honestly say that I, in my own opinion, and of course I'm my hardest critic, I will always point out everything that I did not do correct, everything that did not go perfect, and I will try to do it better the next time. But I have not been a good steward of the things that I've been preaching. And I apologize to that. I genuinely do. I'm a faulted person. But I don't expect your apologies, and I don't expect your remarks. This is not an apology video or apology any of that. This is simply me saying that I have a lot of fucking work to do. I have a lot of fucking work to do. And no amount of fame or recognition or any of that shit changes that fact. No amount of pity or empathy or laziness will get me out of that. There's nothing that is going to take me out of the situation to become a better person besides myself. And I think for too long I've been relying on other people to bring me out of the dirt and bring me out of some place or another. I've been reliant on others to fix my problems or to find out what's wrong. I'm done with that shit. We're going on to a new chapter of the NFS podcast. It'll be a little bit more tame. At least I think so. Who knows? I still get fired up. It'll be, I think, a little bit more calm, though. I'm not here to yell at you guys. I'm not here to yell at myself. I'm here to get better. And I hope you are too. That's all I got today. Take care.
I'm on my way, I'm on my way, yeah.